So in this video, I'm going to be explaining what gain staging actually is and explain the parts that matter and the parts that don't matter. And believe me, a lot of it doesn't matter. I'm going to be talking about noise floor, linear versus non-linear plugins. And then at the end, I'm going to show you a really easy way that you are ensuring that you are doing proper gain staging in your mix. And believe me, it is so simple. It's going to blow your mind. So go ahead and stick with me for the rest of this video. And by the time you get through it, you're never going to question yourself when it comes to gain staging again. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so simply put, gain staging is simply managing signal levels as they move through your track and move through your plugins to make sure that they're not too loud or not too quiet. And speaking of too quiet, let's go ahead and talk about the first thing I want to talk about is noise floor. Just to talk about that really quick and what it is and why it's important. It's really only important if you're going to be recording vocals or recording an instrument, something like that. And I will show you what to look out for. So it's really, really simple. So I've got a vocal here, right? And so let's go ahead. Let's go up here. I recorded these two sets of vocals. It was kind of difficult for me to get this because of the mic that I'm using. I'm using a Shure, and it's not a condenser mic. Condenser mics are a lot more sensitive. So but most of the time we use condenser mics when recording vocals, like in general. So when you do, if you do have a condenser mic and you're going to record, it's just that important that you have a balance of having your mic not too sensitive and also not too quiet. Okay. And so for example, is me singing this track, and I actually turned down the sensitivity quite a bit. I lie awake for you. And this actually worked out because if I turn this up, I lie awake. But you hear that background noise that when I turn it up, that's what you want to avoid. Okay. So you want to have a balance of where when you record that you're not picking up too much background noise or humming or anything like that. That's the noise floor, to where if you turn up the audio, like if you have to turn up the audio a lot to hear the vocal, then you're going to bring up all that noise floor, but also not too sensitive. Like in here, for example, where if you record, it's going to end up peaking. So if you record and then it looks like that, then your signal, your gain on your audio interface or whatever is way too loud. So, but if also you take a listen, so that's too sensitive. This other one's probably a little bit too quiet, but I would err on the side of gain being less than your mic being too sensitive. And so that's really all the noise floor is just picking up that background noise that you might hear in a recording environment. Honestly, unless you're recording your own vocals, you don't really have to worry about that. Let's go ahead and talk about linear versus non-linear effects. I'm going to break this down for you. It's really, really simple to understand, but it's important to understand because certain plugins are going to actually react by the amount of gain that goes into them, and that's why it's important to monitor the gain in between, throughout your signal. But you also don't have to overthink it, and I'm gonna explain that here in a second. So, a linear effect would be something like EQ or reverb, where the amount of gain going into the plugin won't change how the signal sounds. So versus a non-linear effect like compression or a limiter or saturation, for example, if I take this, there's a compressor right here, and then the signal is going to go through this compressor into another compressor right here, and it's an analog modeled compressor, which is important. If I take this output gain and I increase it by 5 dB or whatever, just a few dB or 10 dB, the more gain that I increase, the more gain that goes into this compressor, the more things are going to happen. Like there's going to be more compression. There's going to be more possible character, like saturation, added to the signal. And so the point is, and I'm not going to list them all, but you can kind of Google a list of non-linear versus linear. But dynamic controlling things like compression, saturation, like that, the signal will be affected by how much you increase the gain of the signal going into the plugin. Whereas linear, like reverb, EQ, things like that, they won't affect, it doesn't matter, okay? And so why that's important, even though you don't really have to worry about it that much is that if I were to play this vocal right here, and you can actually see in Ableton, you're going to be able to see the gain level between each plugin. So I'll play it and go ahead and take a look. You see this little mark, this right here, right here, right here.
I feel fire, the flames igniting my veins, chemistry when I'm with you.
And if you take a look at this compressor,
I feel fire, the flames igniting my veins.
It's important because these analog, like back in the day, analog compressors had a sweet spot of an amount of gain that would go into them where they would sound the best. Nowadays, in digital software and Ableton, like it honestly doesn't really matter. Okay, so there's this idea that you want to hit like negative 18 dBs going into a compressor like this, like the CLA 2A, to hit that sweet spot. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Just make sure your signal's not peaking or it's not incredibly quiet going in here, and then just adjust it until it sounds good, and that's all you have to worry about. I've personally never had any issues with the amount of gain or lack of gain going into a compressor like this. And so honestly, especially with what I'm about to show you with how to set up your track, you don't really have to worry about it. As far as practical advice when it comes to staging your gain in between plugins, especially nonlinear plugins, let's go ahead and take a look at this. So I've got two compressors right here, right? So I'm stacking compressors. I've got this compressor with a high ratio and a fast attack, which essentially I'm catching the peaks and I'm preparing this signal going in to this compressor. And I've got videos on my channel, and there's plenty of videos showing like different compression, advanced compression stacking techniques. But essentially what I'm doing is if I were to turn this off, this compressor off, and now I just have the signal going into this compressor, which the CLA 2A, which is essentially just the LA 2A, is an analog model compressor with a set attack and release times. And it really does depend how much gain is going into this, and it really does kind of depend how the signal is set up going to this compressor. Basically, it's going to react differently depending on how much gain goes into it and how the gain is going into it. And so by setting up this compressor here, where I just this is like a classic technique where I just catch the peaks of the vocal and I tone those peaks down and even it out, and then it goes into this compressor, it's going to get more of a controlled sound that I want, versus if I have just the CLA 2A by itself, which you can do if you had like a pretty even vocal to begin with. Then you have no problem just using the CLA 2A, or just depending on the sound that you're going for. But that is an example of how we are gain staging. We are like essentially preparing the signal going into from one compressor into another compressor. Let's go ahead and take a listen, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by this. So if I have the compressor off and you look the gain going into this LA2A, CLA2A, you're going to see a lot more movement here. Let's go ahead and take a listen and watch the movement right here.
I feel fire, the flames igniting my veins, chemistry when I'm with you.
There's a lot more going on. If I turn this compressor on and I'm catching the peaks here, and I even have some output gain increased, so technically there should be the equal amount of gain going into this compressor here. Watch what it looks like now.
I feel fire, the flames igniting my veins, chemistry when I'm with you. I feel fire.
So you can see the one without the compression is a lot more jumpy, and it's doing more, versus the more evened out going into the CLA. It's just more controlled, and you can see it's not jumping as much. It's not having to work as hard to achieve the effect that I'd like, and it's just a more evened out signal, which is what I'm going for. And I'd recommend, the YouTuber Seed and producer Seed to Stage has a really good video on gain staging, and he goes more in depth into this and he has an example of how he compresses a bass and how it goes into a limiter and how it changes the sound. I would recommend, and I'll actually post the link to his video in the description below because it's really, really great. And it goes into detail of how he goes into much more detail of like linear versus nonlinear effects and how to prepare your signal going from one compressor to a limiter, for example. And he talks about that quite a bit. Okay, now I'm going to show you what you can do to set up your track to where you never really have to worry about gain staging and keep it really simple, so you can produce and make great sounding music and just not have to worry about this stuff. So if you go down to my kick drum here, here's my kick, and you can see I've got a sample. If you play the kick, this is what it sounds like. And I usually have a drum rack and I play the kick through here through like some MIDI or whatever, or you can drive the kick however you want to do it. You can see that the volume in the drum rack, it's actually pulled down. So you can have it up to 0 or whatever. I had a kind of a mix of things going on. It's like pulled down to -6 dB, plus I pulled all the way down to -10. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop it right here and go ahead and look where the kick is ending up as far as like what gain, like dB gain it's hitting on the fader. So check this out. So it's hitting around -12 dB. So if you just pull your kick drum down to like negative and have it hitting around -10 dB or so, and then you use that as an anchor and you mix everything around the kick, because the thing is the kick is the most important part of your track. It should be like hitting through it. It should essentially be the loudest, like the kick, vocal, and bass are kind of like the loudest parts of your track, especially that kick because it's dance music. If you were to bring it down far enough and mix around it, by the time you're all done with everything, it's going to leave you with enough headroom on the master channel here where you can do some mastering and like you're good to go and you're never going to be peaking. The key is you don't want to have all your volume levels pull down so far, because then it's just going to get tricky to mix and all that. But if you have, but you also don't want to, a lot of newbie producer will start and they'll have everything at 0. And then like, let's say they put a cool synth and then they want to make it louder. They put past 0 and now everything starts to get in red. And although it doesn't really matter that much, because you can just put a utility on your master and you can pull down the gain and then whatever. Honestly, it's just so simple to like take your kick and take it down about -10 dB and then mix around that. It literally just sets up your track, and it'll set you up to where you'll most likely have at least a few dB, probably more of headroom on the master channel, and you'll be good to go. And really, it's as simple as that. If you just pull that kick down and mix around the kick and use that kick as an anchor, you just don't really have to worry about gain staging as much, aside from like, the kind of more advanced stuff like staging the gain in between compression and saturation like that. But the whole point of this video is that if you just do this and then you use your ears and you learn basic mixing techniques, as far as like this whole idea of like ensuring that your dB is -18 before it goes into the whatever compressor to hit that sweet spot, you just don't have to worry about that. Okay. And so that's like if I can get one takeaway from this video, it's that if you just do this, pull your kick down, use it as an anchor, mix around the kick, don't ever have anything in the red and don't ever have anything like way too quiet, then you're pretty much good to go. And you just don't have to worry about this, and don't overcomplicate it, and don't get lost in trying to make everything perfect, because we're in digital and it doesn't really matter that much. So if you like this video and you like how I kind of try to take complicated things and make them way less complicated, well, look in the description below. I have my school community, Ignis Academy, which actually has my course, my mixing and mastering course, Mix Immersions, as well as a compression masterclass course. It's $49. That's actually, you get a free 7-day trial. I'm doing it. Most likely, if you're seeing this video, I have a 7-day trial. It might change in the future, but you can go ahead, join that, take my courses, learn everything you need to know about this stuff, as well as I'm starting a community and doing the live weekly calls, all that. There's not that many members yet, but that's what I'm working on. So if anything, if you just want to take my courses for a really, really low price, look in the description below and check those out. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. All right, see ya.